Alright, here we go, episode 4 of our Hero Quest, where we're going to be doing the Dwarf. Now, if you've been watching this channel, you know that I like to give a shout out to the YouTube members first for supporting this channel monetarily. It's huge. I can't thank you enough. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for your charitable donations. If you are not a YouTube member, if you'd like to be one, go to the front of the channel. And if you don't want to do that, hey, that's cool too. I appreciate that you're here. Appreciate you're watching the channel. Just hit that subscribe button. Without further ado, let's go. Alright, the first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be priming and prepping our miniatures, and with that we are going to be scraping off all those mold lines. Now the Dwarf for Hero Quest was kind of messed up, at least mine was, so there's a couple of things we're going to have to do first. We're going to scrape off all those mold lines, and then we're going to have to put some green stuff. So I take some green stuff. You can order some off Amazon. If you need some, there's some in the link below in the description. You can get it at your local hobby store, whatever you got to do. Wet your fingers first and then mold it together and then put it into the crack of where you're at. Now there's a huge crack behind the right arm of my Dwarf that I had to put it in. Just take a filing tool or whatever you got and put it in there and then kind of push it in and let it dry. It doesn't take that long to dry, maybe half an hour, maybe less. And then once that's dry, or if it's still drying, you can do the earth texture and put your earth texture on the bottom of the miniature and let that dry. After your earth texture is dry, hit that with some black primer. I'm using my airbrush, but if you don't have this, just use whatever spray paint you normally use for your miniatures. And then a white zenithal highlighting from above, and that is all of our prep and priming. Alright, first thing you're going to do after your prep and priming is done and everything is dry, we're going to take some Aggaros Dunes and hit up our little base area. Next, we're going to take some of that Militarium Green. These are contrast paints from Citadel. These save so much time. If you don't have them, I suggest you pick up some of them because they're awesome. And just put little blotches into the brown. Next, we're going to hit that skin, and we're going to be using some Knight-Questor Flesh for our Dwarf. So obviously, we're going to hit the face, the nose, the arms, the hands, and don't forget the back side of our arms and the knees, along with some of the legs. And I did about 2 coats. If you're thinning your paints properly, it took me about 2 coats to do this. So let the first coat dry, then put a second coat on. For the middle of the axe blade, we're going to be using some Iron Warriors just in the middle. Don't forget to do the undercoat on the back side, as I had forgotten to do that like a noob. For the middle of our axe, we're going to be using some regular Leadbelcher. Now I've done a couple silver paints from Citadel, and I like a little bit of tone variation, and when the model is finished you can definitely notice the subtlety in those tone variations, so that's why I'm doing that. You don't need to necessarily do that, that's just kind of what I'm doing. For our brighter silver, we're going to be using some Iron Hands steel. We're going to be using this on the steel of our axe, or the edge of our axe, the middle of the axe blade where that little glyph is at, the head of our Dwarf, where the little silver spots are covering his forehead for some type of protection. Maybe it's like a psych protection. I don't know. The back chainmail and just little spots that are going to be on our beard. Now I didn't do the beard first, and I should have. We're going to paint that in Abaddon Black and then do the silver spots on the beard for our beard cusps, I guess you could say. So you can do the beard first and then do that, but that's what we're going to hit that with. And I had just mentioned this, and it's going to be our black beard. in Abaddon Black. And just like I was foreseeing in the future, some Iron Hand Steel. I'm just trying to save you guys some steps because I did this out of order, but I didn't want to re-edit it because then you'd be like, "Well, how'd this get there? This is crazy." And I agree, so I just kept it original. For the back side of our Dwarf tunic, we're going to be using some Dryad Bark. For the lower portion of our Dwarf tunic, we're going to be using some Xereus Purple. Now this is specifically on our top of our boots and the lower part of our tunic that our Dwarf is wearing. Now we're going to go this on very lightly and just be a little careful not to get this into the silver. We're also going to be using this on our gauntlets or underneath our gauntlets to match the card art. For the darker leather regions, sounds kind of spicy, we're going to be using some Rhinox Hide on our belt, specifically in between the raised areas, our boots, not to include the front tips that are going to be in metal, as we're going to be doing here in a minute, and the front belt portion. And like as I just mentioned, we're going to be using some Warplock Bronze for the front portion of our metal toes boots. Steel toe boots, I guess you could say. Now for what I consider the focal point of this miniature, the rich gold look. Now if you are a Dwarf fan, I have a connection to dwarfs, specifically dwarfs from Warhammer, because when I started playing Warhammer Fantasy back when I was 10 years old, I liked playing dwarfs, I liked playing goblins, I liked playing orcs. They were my favorites, so I have a huge connection to dwarfs. The gold, the dwarfs hoard, read Lord of the Rings, you can watch the movies, it doesn't matter, you know that Smaug hoards all their gold. That's from the Hobbit. So we're going to be focusing on a lot of the gold portions, the dragon top of the axe to the pauldrons to portions of the bottom of that axe, and we are really just going to make this look very golden. Now we're going to put a wash on it here in a minute, but we're going to brighten that right back up, and I want that to look like that golden rich dwarf as he's Gimli going and charging into battle. Makes me so happy. As if you're following along, you know that I'm talking about stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with, oh, we need to paint here, paint there. I like discussing fantasy, books, video games, anything to do with basically nerd stuff, because that's what I am. I'm a nerd. And sometimes I go on tangents, so I'm sorry. If you don't like it, leave me a comment how you don't like it. Otherwise, keep painting. To add to the richness of our dwarf, we're going to add some Evil Sunz Scarlet to our rings and to the eye of the dragon. Don't forget to do the top and bottom of that dragon. For For the next color on our rings and for the little spots on our axe, we're going to be using Xereus Purple. And for our last color, we're going to be using some Moot Green. Now off camera, I put some white into the pupils of the dwarf. And we're going to go over this with the wash here in a second. And I'm doing this as kind of a test. Is it easier to put some white in and then wash it first? So I'm going to try that. So you can do that or you cannot, but I suggest you do it. Alright, for our first shade or wash, whatever your prefer verbiage is. We're going to be using some Druchi Violet onto the purple areas. If you get some on that gold, it's not a big deal at all. Next, we're going to take our Reikland Fleshshade and we're going to go obviously over our Fleshshade areas. Again, if you get this onto the gold, it's not a big deal because you can use Reikland Fleshshade for the gold portions as well. If you don't have Seraphim Sepia, it's not a big deal. You can use either or. And for our gold areas, we're going to use Seraphim Sepia if you got it. For all of our metal pieces, obviously we're using some Nuln Oil, no surprise here. And I wanted to talk to you guys about our Instagram, which is at nerd.knights. My kids have been begging me to get on there, so we have decided to do some Pokemon card openings that I'm going to post on Instagram. If you're into Pokemon, go check it out. Go support my kids who are infatuated with Pokemon. For all of our other brown portions, we're going to use some Agrax Earthsahde, and this is going to be our last shade or wash that we're going to use. After everything is dry, we're going to do our reapplication of some base colors mixed with some highlights. This is the last thing we're doing. So we're going to start with our Knight-Questor Flesh, and we're going to go on to our highlights. Now we're going to be working on the nose, cheekbones, the knuckles, the fingers, and we're going to be working on some of those muscles in between, not getting anything into the recesses. We don't want anything into the recesses, and just building up those highlights. Next, we are going to take a 50-50 mix of Knight-Questor Flesh and Cadian Fleshtone, and we're going to use this in the same exact spots we just did for the pure Knight-Questor Flesh. And what this is going to do is start building up our highlights, but we don't want to overdo it because the dwarf is a darker skinned individual and his skin is not light at all, so we don't want to go crazy with it. We just want to make certain spots of light to catch your eye in certain areas. And I just took 2 quick dabbles of Abaddon Black and made some eye slits into the pupils. And that's all I'm doing. I'm not doing anything else. So that's it. We're going to move on to the Liberator Gold, which is going to be the highlight for our gold. And we're not going to use this conservatively. We're going to put this on there because this is going to brighten it right up. And we're going to go all over this miniature and give it that nice bright look that we're looking for. And for the purple, we're going to start with a reapplication of Xereus Purple, just to brighten up just a little bit. I'm then going to go to a 50-50 mix of Xereus Purple and Genestealer Purple and just kind of go over the same areas we just went over. Nothing crazy, you just kind of brighten up just a little bit, just to make it look a little bit more purple or light purple, like in the card art. To brighten up our silver bits, we're going to start with our chainmail, and we're just going to hit that on there. I know you're probably thinking like this is going to get in the recesses, but you really don't notice a whole lot because Ironbreaker is not like a super solid color. It's very washy almost. So we're going to take that and we're going to hit the chainmail. We're going to hit our edge of our blade, the areas onto our hair. We're also going to use this just for the little tips of our toes, just to kind of give it some coloration. To brighten up the eyes of our dragon and the portions on our rings, we're going to use some Wild Rider Red. And then reapplication a little Moot Green on the green areas that we hit up. And finally some Genestealer Purple just to brighten up those purple areas just a wee bit. And finally, your favorite part of painting this miniature, the base, because it means it's done. But we're going to do a couple other things after this, so stay tuned real quick. We're going to hit that base with some Abaddon Black, let that dry. We're going to then take some super glue and we're going to put a little tuft of dead grass in the middle of that, just to give it a little extra pizzazz. And that's it. That's it. Hey, I want to say thank you. You guys did awesome. I know you guys did awesome because I see all the pictures you guys sent me. You guys are awesome. I just want to say I love each and every one of you. Thank you so much for supporting this channel, for your donations, your time, your leaving me a comment, giving me thumbs up. Like, you guys are awesome. Like, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, and the Nerd Knights family. Thank you for everything you've done for me and supporting me. So until the next time, paint on.